Welcome to a special edition of Crawford County Outdoors. I'm Dwayne Kohler. Today we are going to do the Cussewago Meander. So this has been a big French Creek year. French Creek, the Pennsylvania River of the year. We're going to do a lot of things around that topic this year. And so we're going to tour a new property of the French Creek Valley Conservancy today, donated. That's now going to be, I guess, in a way like a park. Chef Lisa's going to have a recipe for us after, but so stay tuned and we're going to the hike.
This is Henry and Elaine Burkholder, and they started this whole business over here at Cussewago Meanders by donating property to us, and then we actually went ahead and purchased the property next door to make this huge, gorgeous wetland area near the Cussewago Creek called Cussewago Meanders, because Cussewago does meander, which is very cool. So Henry has walked this property a lot, so
sure.
he's kind of.
We'll go over see the.
We're going to go over to a little
path down there, a driveway, easier to go down. So as I get older, easier is better. So like that. So anyway, let me tell you how this started. Okay, how it started was they were going to cut down this on this side of the road, and Lane can pass this map around. On this side of the road was 19 acres of woods. Okay, a big piece of pie. And then I owned another chunk there, and in order to get their trees out, they needed to cross my place to get the landing. And I had a timber sale here in winter of 2018, and you can see the landing, getting up there. They'd have to pull the log trucks up and down that thing with the skidder to get in and out. So it's not the best landing. And the dilemma was, they needed access to my thing, and they were going to cut the trees down to 12 inches on the stump, okay? Not 12 inches diameter breast height, but 12 inches on the stump. So, I mean, that tree probably right there is 12 inches on the stump, okay? So you're going to get 2 2x6s and 2 2x4s, and that's it. And 1 unit of a log is 16 feet, not 8 feet, it's 16 feet. So 24 feet would be 1.5 logs. That's just how it is, okay? So I said, well, that isn't going to happen. So the problem was Mr. Hauk, and he's dead now, had this house and 19 acres on this side and 47 acres on this side, but the old map said 97 acres, but it wasn't 97 acres. I mean, there wasn't enough land. I mean, there's whatever. So anyway, I had to buy the house, had to buy this piece, had to buy that piece, and then I had to buy the trees on that piece, and then I had to sell the house, and that's the piece that I wanted. And this was swampland over here. It was like, well, I got it for not much, and the house came $60,000 for the whole thing, and the house sold for $45,000. So for $15,000, I got that piece, and this piece kind of came with it. And it's like, well, I got it. It had not much value. And then it's like I became involved, French Creek Valley Conservancy, and donate a little bit to it and help it out and stuff. And I thought, this would be a good fit, okay, for the Cussewago that flows into French Creek. So then I thought, well, I'll give him this half, okay, but I'll keep this half except because of the road. Well, the way it was, and I had it surveyed, okay, and I paid for that when I bought it, okay. So in order to do it, I had to have it all resurveyed again, and then okay with Vernon Township if I could subdivide it. And I said, where does the water come off of this here? Where does it end up? It ends up in Cussewago, and that ends up in the French Creek, so you can have it all, okay? And then I've got some more up there. I got another 80 acres, and I'm probably going to carve out 15 acres of that because it's already a field, and it's a nice field, and it's flat. And if I give it to you, you'll plant it to trees. That's okay. This is the tree, so I'm going to give some more. And so anyway, when we gave it to him, okay, it was appraised at $2,100 an acre for this swampland. Well, nobody in their right mind would, like swampland in Florida, only a fool would buy it. But if I'm getting that, and then that worked out that I can deduct that on my taxes up to 40%. So for the last 3 years, I haven't paid any taxes, okay? Because I've got enough deductions and stuff, and charities and other things that we give to, and writing this off, and so I need to give them some more.
You can give us all the land
Yeah,
you
no,
like, Henry.
yeah.
Thank
And
you.
the other thing, it kind of makes sense. I have this 19-acre piece here. I got another 19 acres that's woods here, and there'll be another 65 acres there. And it's like, hey, then they can kind of manage that. And then the main thing that they need to do on the woodland is cut grapevines, okay? And that makes sense to do that. And we can have little work parties. I know Josh had a session, and I don't know who guys volunteered or whatever, because there was some trash here, and I picked up 3 buckets, and I was coming back more, and they picked it up. But then I found a dump, and there's another dump in the middle, and I kind of like that. So I'll haul that out. So whatever. So I think it's it's like all this comes together in this piece. So where's the map I want to show?
Pass it around.
Well, show them.
Yeah, it's been
I
around.
wanted to mention the gentleman who bought the house at first was kind of hesitant about,
Having the Conservancy.
we don't want to give it to the Conservancy. Because
Yeah,
now
well,
tell us what we have to do.
Hey,
But now he's very, he's actually helping Henry. He and his son are going to help him get all the trash out of there.
Yeah.
So
the
he's come
piece
around.
the piece that we're going to look at is that abuts Cussewago, and it's a snake, okay? And right down here is like 1,100 feet of frontage on the Cussewago. And I don't know if we'll see it today, but there's other riparian oxbows and stuff where the, Mississippi River, any river, 100 years, 200 years, 500 years, it's not where it is, something that way. So this pie-shaped piece, had to cut it out, and then there's a piece here. And then I own all this red stuff. I have like 271 acres. Well, I did have, but whatever. But eventually it'll be less. And so I'm going to carve out some more for them in the original woods and stuff.
You still own it in your heart.
Oh yeah, no. Well, no. Hey, this is the thing. You know what? I don't pay taxes on, but they let me do whatever I want. And I do good things, And so
We've planted almost 800 trees.
yeah,
Red oaks and white oaks.
yeah, in trees and tree shells. And I call it pediatric forestry. And it isn't like you plant the tree, put the shelter on, and forget it. You got to
gotta go back.
because that shelter has to be tight against the ground, or the mice get in and then girdle the little young sapling. And then it has to be 5 foot tall, or if it's shorter, the deer browse, we'll get it. And they like oak and red oak, white oak, and stuff. And red oak and white oak are the 2 species that are going to do the best in climate change. Okay, and red oak has value. Cherry, they'll browse. Deer will browse cherry if there's nothing else. It's bitter. It tastes like coffee. They don't like it. But for some reason they like oak. Stuff. And oak is a good thing to plant because then the mass, the seeds, the acorns, the nuts, and that's good for the squirrels and the wildlife. So this is a nice wildlife thing. I like the other thing. I don't know if we'll see it, whatever, we come back. But on the sign, I like it. It's just new, the Cussewago Meanders, and I like that. That's a good Meanders because it meanders. So that's better than Burkholder Swamp. Okay. So they asked me, well, what do you want to name it? It's like, no, you decide. You decide. Cussewago mussels or something. Meanders. That's a good thing because it does meander. I said, but anyway, there's a new little sign, and they're probably working on putting them on all the things. It says "Nature for All," and then it says "Everyone is welcome here," and I like that. And that doesn't mean you can dump off your trash and you can camp and make a big mess and stuff, but you're welcome because we need to get people out to nature, because if we don't conserve it, if we don't do it, it'll be gone. It won't be there. Now, I don't think this had a whole lot of development potential, where that sign is about where I own a little further. You could put a house trailer here, I suppose, or something, or whatever. But for French Creek Valley Conservancy flowing into the watershed and stuff, it's wonderful property. And I got $2,100 worth of stuff that I can deduct off of it, and it was like $140. Now, when I bought that, when we bought it, we put it in my wife's name and my son's name because I was a physician, family practice physician that delivered over 1,800 babies, which is hard to believe, and whatever. But that was fun. But anyway, the women did all the work. But anyway, So my son and his wife and Elaine and I we each got to deduct $70,000 up to 40% of your income. So that's nice. And hey, whatever. So, I mean, I'm willing to pay my taxes, but I don't like the laws. You know what I mean? And the other thing, but to me, I sleep well at night, and even after I'm gone, it's like, hey, this was conserved, and I did my part, and the stuff and whatever, and it's a wonderful piece, and it fits in with the Stewart property, you know, the stuff, and it goes in and stuff and whatever. So it's wonderful. So let's head out. We'll walk down. So now I need some help. Okay. So we're now. We crossed back their ways into the Stewart property, is what I call it. Okay. And the new thing that through the Western Pennsylvania and the cats or somebody got some money.
I'll tell you all about it. So after we acquired the donation from the Burkholders, we had the opportunity to purchase this property from the Stewart family. And often French Creek Valley Conservancy has properties donated, but in this case this property was for sale, and it is a large property and was expensive. It was kind of out of the realm of what we would normally acquire, so we worked with Ducks Unlimited, Western Pennsylvania Conservancy, and the Pennsylvania Game Commission to put together an application to get a NACA grant. NACA is North American Wetlands Conservation Act. So we applied for this grant, and the award of this grant was $1 million. This was the first ever grant that was awarded, $1 million grant that was awarded in Pennsylvania, and it was to fund these collaborative projects. About $370,000 of that $1 million came to French Creek Valley Conservancy. The rest of the money went to our other partners, but it allowed us to purchase this property. But one of the really important aspects of that entire process is that we had to come up with $1 million in match. So in order to be awarded that $1 million, we had to have $1 million of match to go with it. And French Creek Valley Conservancy has had so many properties donated to us of significant value, we were able to provide almost $400,000 in match. So our match counted even for more money than we acquired. But it was critical in allowing us to be able to purchase this property. So now we have these two properties together. This is a really important aspect of our work, is that we want to work on having forest connectivity. We want to have larger parcels of land that are adjacent to each other, and the forest really is an important part in making sure that clean, clear water makes its way to Cussewago Creek and to French Creek. The forest itself, the upland forest, and the riparian area down by the creek are both really important in helping us to protect French Creek. But so this property is exciting because it has a lot of potential for us to develop a new forest. And last year for the French Creek cleanup, we had about 100 people out here planting trees, and we were fortunate that we had applied for some grants and were awarded all of them, and will be fully funded to do hundreds of tree plantings this year as well. So here, a lot of them are oak. As Henry said, oak really are going to be the most climate adaptive, but they also will serve as hosts to the largest number of insects and birds, and they are most beneficial in the landscape. So there's a lot of oaks here. I don't know all of the species that are planted here, but we always work with Mark Lewis, the forester from DCNR. He helps us in our tree selection and in our projects. But so we will have a couple more projects this size again this year.
What fraction of the trees will make it?
That I don't know. It could be 10%, it could be greater than that. It's really important to maintain them. As Henry said, you don't just plant them and leave them. So it was nice that we had a crew out here earlier this week when it was spring, not when it was second winter. The folks out here in the spring a few days ago came and checked all the tree shelters, and we have volunteer crews that help adopt some of our properties and help us to do that work.
If you say you get 80%, you're probably lying, okay? If you get over 50%, it's good. If you're doing 10%, you're doing something wrong, because it's either the wrong species or too dry or stuff, or if you don't, your shelters blew over or tell us you're short. So, like I said before, the shelter needs to be 5 feet, because if it's less than that, the deer can reach it and browse off the top. And if you get an oak tree or, you know, any hardwood tree, and you get cut off, chew off the lead or the top, well, then you got a bush and it doesn't work, okay? And then you gotta every year go around and make sure this hits tight against the ground, or the mice, the moles get in and just girdle the little sapling. And I know you've got some evergreens in here that are sheltered. I'm not sure that they need to be sheltered. It doesn't hurt them, but they usually don't browse those, you know, and stuff like that.
And they have, the tree tubes have nets on the top. You can see they have nets on the top to keep birds out.
I don't think that hurts anything, but I'm not impressed. I mean, when I started, I put nets on and kept the nets in to fly off. I've never found a dead bird in the shelter. So yeah, bees. Now I had the bear. The bears were looking for honey and the bees and stuff, and the bear just knocks them over. You know, it's like, what happened to this? The bears, and the neighbor lady was putting out honey for the bear. I mean, she really was. It's like, hey, you're gonna. Then she said, well, why did the bear get into my garbage? I'm putting out honey. You know what I'm saying? It's an invitation. It's a little bit like when you plant a row of shrubs or trees or something. You tend to plant them too close together. Then when they grow up, your evergreens, your Christmas trees, oh, I planted them too close. I like this spacing because they're not too close. You may have to put in some more replacements as they die off. But this was at one time a hayfield, okay? And they made hay off it. But no farmer would farm this today, so it might as well be in trees. You know what I mean? And the stuff, and of course, and there's a pond there and another pond there. So it's a nice thing, a nice project. The other thing I use, I want people to put their feelers out. I use rebar, 1/2 inch, 3/8 or 3/4 inch rebar. Rebar is the bottom of the barrel when it comes to the field. They is the least cord, okay? So I don't know if any of you know any cement contractors, any bridge builders, any people like that, PennDOT highway projects. When they're done with the rebar, they take it to the scrapyard. They don't get much. You need a 6-foot piece, okay? And this stuff. What I like about what the post is, they rot off at the bottom. I got some rebar that I put in 2007. They rusted and didn't fall over. The problem with these, they're going to keep falling off and do that stuff. And you want to leave these on as long as you can, because what happens, you get at the tree like that size there. See that about 2.5 inches across, that one in there? That's perfect for a bucket. So you've done all this pediatric forestry, and it's a nice green thing. Let's take it out. Instead of, I'm going to rub on a junk tree. No, I want a big one. You know what I mean? And they ruin a good one. And then if you take it out, he finds another good one, okay? So you got to leave these shelters on a long time, and you got to leave the stakes on. The other thing, too, that the stake does, the trees in the shelter are wimpy, okay? Because they don't have the natural wind and stuff and whatever. So, and I've done that. I take, oh, this tree's big enough. I take out the stake, leave on the shelter, and I come back and it's over. You know, so it's a lot of work. You know what I mean? Not just planting them, but every year you got to go. And if you don't do that, then you've wasted your time.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
And money.
So I think we need to be looking for shelves. So now, is everybody holding up okay? Good. So now let's walk down here, and we'll go, and then we can see some of the lower stuff there, and we can see some oxbows where the water used to be. Hey, in fact, this is I think maybe an example, because the emerald ash borer makes a D hole.
Yeah.
See the little D hole? This is a dead ash tree. See, there's a couple more D holes where it goes in, whatever, and whatever. So
I lost the largest tree in my yard. And I mean, we live near the college, you know, residential, not out in the woods. There was a giant ash in my backyard that they estimate was probably 100 years old. And over 2 years' time, it was decimated. But there's really nice fungus growing on the stump.
yeah, that's a good thing. Okay, see, that one is a beech, okay? And tighter.
than bark on a beach.
Be that for my life.
That's a good saying.
And the other thing of beech, there's a poem about the beech trees, and they're the last one to lose their leaves. Okay? It's not a high value tree. In other words, if cherry would bring $700 for 1,000 board feet, and oak would be 500, hard maple would bring 400 or 500. Okay, beech would bring $50. Okay, so it's pulpwood, it's firewood. It's sometimes used in furniture for the blocking or backing. You know, the wood you don't see. You know what I mean? It's like that. It's very hard to make railroad ties out of it too. It's not, and it doesn't. And the other thing with beech, it's connected underground. So if you cut down, this is a small one, but if you cut down a beech tree, okay, a big one, you get beech brush, 200 little ones come to the funeral.
Yep.
And then you just got beech brush. So really, what I do is, here I'm not, but what I do, a hatchet squirt, okay? And after Thanksgiving, you make frills with a hatchet and then spray in Roundup, 50% Roundup, and that kills them. And this is similar to, this is musclewood or ironwood. It's related to the beech family, and it has no value. It's very good firewood. Then you cut this with your chainsaw, and you see sparks. It's that hard, even with a sharp chain. I mean,
That may be why it's called ironwood.
ironwood, ironwood or
Just
musclewood.
very
Powder poles, okay? See, and I don't think that's for the phone line, okay? And that's like and you see more of them. That's the crow flies, and that's the first electricity. See, so I don't know if that's the original 1937 or whatever, but they went from point to point. Fewer poles, fewer wire and stuff, and there's no way that you get rural electric or Penn Electric to come and put a power line down here. You see where they moved it up to the road, and or close to the road, and even further. But that's there's some history there. Let's cross over that way, and then we'll head back up. So what kind of this tree to me belongs on the ground. This is the worst tree for lumber there ever is. It's not a lumber tree, and it's rough grouse like it, okay, but it has no value. I've cut some. My neighbor had a sawmill, cut the cords, and we'd get them cut, and they go like bananas before it's quaking aspen. Okay, it's very soft. It holds a lot of water in it. It burns up poof really quick, and it rots. You got to cover it because it'll rot before you burn it. You know what I mean? It's stuff in water. But rough grouse like it here doesn't. And that's one over there too. Right behind the main. I think that's a quaking aspen. Yes, they do. Yeah, right. Sure. Yeah. And you cut it, you get more stuff.
You can have the same tree and get multiple.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. It's not. It's junk. You know, as far as that. But that's what it is.
Let's not say it's junk. We won't call it junk, Henry. It does serve a purpose.
No, it doesn't bother me. I had 40 acres, okay, that I had timbered off, and my net was $41,000. Okay, the bid was 48, and the stuff would anyway. The stuff I net 41,000. So I'm not saying you're going to get that here, but some trees here and trees there, if you get 10, 15, 20,000, that's money that you can, and you don't have to take out all the trees. You know what I'm saying? Take out a few that are. And what I like and what we did is, first of all, the worst first, and take trees that are starting to go the other way. In other words, see this crease in this one? Like if this tree, I'm not saying it does, but if it had a hole in the bottom, that it's going to soon rot up the center, and the butt log, the first 16 feet and the first 18 feet, that's where most of the money is in the butt log, the first log. So the consulting forester, Mark Lewis, can do that stuff, and then I can, in consultation with him, can look and see, hey, we can do a little thinning, a little harvesting. This would also be a place that's flat enough that you may be able to do it with horses. Okay.
Yeah, with all of our properties, our conserved properties, we have a land management plan, and if it's appropriate, we also have a forest management plan.
Yeah.
So when we acquire the property, we talk about, we plan out what we would like to do with the property in the future, how we could increase the conservation value of a property. But in a property like this, we create a forestry management plan. Not a timber management plan, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
But how do we conserve and protect the forest forest, but then also is there the potential to do a timber harvest that would help sustain the property for the stewardship
Yeah.
fund?
Well, yeah, this, as far as timberland, we've seen a few good trees, but this is not a great piece of woods for timber.
Right.
This is a great piece of woods for wildlife. This is a great piece of woods for watershed, keeping the mud and stuff flowing to the thing, and it flows into Cussewago, and that flows into French Creek, and it fits, and it's great. And I feel good that nobody's gonna come in and just trash it.
Yeah,
So,
the Cussewago Creek contributes more than 10% of the flow to French Creek. There's 10 major tributaries, and some of them are larger or smaller, but Cussewago is about 10%, maybe a little more than 10% of the flow of French Creek.
okay, well, let's kind of head back.
Yeah.
Hey, I mean, we didn't see Cussewago, but what you didn't really see much, because you only see a little portion of it, but I think you got to see a part of the woods, you got to see the planting, stuff, whatever, and things. We saw maybe, or just before we came back, there was a little bit of an oxbow there. What we crossed over, we're coming down, just water coming down. But it's a nice wildlife riparian and watershed acquisition. So I'm delighted that it's not going to be just hacked or, high graded and stuff and whatever. So.
Thank you.
Joining us now, Chef Lisa Beck. So Lisa, one more time here, and we'll probably have a lot of these this year. We're going to do another French Creek kind of a topic here today.
That's right, and we're not using fish from French Creek.
And it's not a hellbender. It's not.
No, not a hellbender salamander. Today we're going to do baked cod.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
Yeah, and it's that time of year where people are eating more fish. So I thought French Creek, I'll do some cod this week, and we'll go from there. And easy. Not a fussy recipe at all. And I think you're going to enjoy it.
Yay.
So, okay? All right, so I took, they were 2 nice pieces of cod, and I just cut them into fourths.
Okay.
And what we're going to do is just take a glass dish. We preheated our oven to 400.
Ooh, can I spray?
Please do.
Yay.
So we'll spray the bottom of that.
One of my favorite things.
I know.
Just like
you're-
cracking eggs.
Yes, he's a good egg cracker too. Okay. And then we're going to put 4 slices of lemon down.
Okay.
Go. And then I'm going to place these on top. Some of the pieces are not, the exact same shape, but it's okay. It'll work. And then let me just wipe my hands off.
Okay.
And then I took 3 tablespoons of butter, and I've been letting it sit on the counter, and we're softening it. So we're going to put that in here. Okay. And a tablespoon of olive oil.
Okay.
I have 2 minced garlic cloves. So get that in there. And then, of course, this recipe calls for fresh herbs. I did not have that. Of course, I'd be going to get them out of the garden.
Your herb garden, this
That's
isn't
right.
the time of year
it's
for
not
that.
the time of the year, and I didn't do any out of
This
the
has
freezer.
been kind of
or
a
the
crazy year.
Yeah.
This year.
Yeah.
1 week ago, it was 70 degrees.
And today?
Now it's 18.
Right.
And blustery and wind. I hope folks can hear the people talking on our hike. But the way the wind was blowing and the snow coming down, I'm not sure. But at any rate, we did a nice hike on the Cussewago Meander.
Yes.
So that's another interesting, brand new piece, that you can connect. I didn't realize this, but the Cussewago Creek creates 10% of the water that goes into French Creek.
Really? I
didn't
knew
know
it was
that.
a tributary, but I didn't
Yeah.
know it was 10%.
Yeah. So
Wow.
that was
Fascinating.
There was lots of stuff that was talked about. So I'm afraid folks aren't going to be able to hear it just
Right.
because of how strong the wind was and everything. But
Yeah, and if they turn it up, they might hear the wind louder. But anyway.
kind of like the veterans hunt. Yeah,
Yeah.
you couldn't hear what was going on except you'd hear a little gunshot going off.
Right.
But then the wind was just
Right.
crazy.
But they always hear the recipes. It's always a good
That's the
thing.
good part.
Yes, it's
That's the
quiet
good
in
part.
here, so we're good there. So yeah, no, I didn't have any of my fresh herbs, which this recipe would call for a tablespoon of chives,
Okay.
let me take that back. 2 tablespoons of chives, 2 tablespoons of parsley, 2 tablespoons of thyme leaves. Okay, and then I broke it down to about a teaspoon of each because they're strong when they're dried, and a half a teaspoon of paprika, which we didn't have to cut down, so I kept that at the same amount. So we're going to put that in there. Okay. And a little bit of salt and pepper to taste. I didn't really do much salt because I didn't have unsalted butter. And so you don't really need any, you know, in that regard. So all we have to do is mash this up, and it's going to get a little messy, but it's going to
Well,
be
that's what
fragrant.
happens when you're making sauce, right?
That's
Yeah,
right.
you gotta
And
mash it up.
And it smells. Smell
It
this?
does. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, and so what we're going to mash it up real well, and then we'll place it on top
Okay.
of the cod. And always, you know, I recommend to people when they're looking for a cod fish, look for something that's wild, caught, you know, more on the fresh side. This is really nice. I'm going to get a little knife because we're going to try to smear it on there.
Okay.
Spoon might help too. I got this mixed up rather well. So if you can see that. It's real fragrant. It would be even more fragrant, of course, if we had
The fresh.
the fresh. So we're gonna put a little dollop on each. Where's this knife? It smells so good.
I like the label. We're going to have a dollop on each.
Just a dollop on
dollop,
each. Yep. And then we're gonna spread them out. Let's make sure we get some more. This piece is a larger piece. Don't want to let any go to waste.
Interesting.
Yes.
That was
Okay.
great.
Get this out of the way. See if I can get that to. It's gonna, with the butter and the oil, it is gonna kind of slide on the sides.
Once it melts, it's going to kind of,
Yeah, spread out.
so the whole thing will get covered. Okay.
And even, you know, around the bottoms.
So it's like a little hat right now, but it's going to get completely covered.
Mhm.
Okay.
Just spread it out. Okay. And then we're going to take one more lemon slice,
Ah.
place them on the top.
So it's kind of like a lemon sandwich, huh?
It is. Okay. And we actually have one in the oven to pull out. This will go into the oven for 13 to 15 minutes. We're almost at the
Okay.
end of that, so we can talk for a few minutes about the truck that you took out by Cussewago, and then we'll pull that one out. And then, of course, you know, our favorite time. We get
It
to
was, of
taste
course, the thing that everybody was focused on was the bad weather.
Right.
But Dr. Burkholder and his family purchased the property and then contributed it to the. So it's almost like a park in
Right.
a way, and it's like the creek kind of zigzags all around, and we couldn't really get to the creek because you couldn't exactly see where to step.
Right,
because
right.
because of the snow and the ice and everything. But it's the Cussewago Meander is
Yeah,
the, you know,
and that's
is the
exactly
name of
what
the
it
park.
does. It meanders.
It's just
Yes.
all that's kind of how Cussewago Creek rolls, you know.
Yeah.
When you come down 108, you see it, or 102 rather, you see it behind the houses there, and it's
Right.
just all back and forth, back and
Right.
forth, back and forth. And same thing, you know, on this property, you can actually walk all around there. They had a whole section of trees planted to kind of control the
runoff
flow
and the
into
flow,
the
right,
water, and
right.
there was like I said, I'm disappointed that I hope some of the audio comes through, but there was a whole conversation about how it was done and the way to cover up the trees with a tube so that
Right.
so the deer wouldn't eat them until they got to be big enough
It's
to actually
good
be a good
size.
and healthy tree, and
Right.
different, you know, talking about oak trees and cherry trees and you know, birch trees and all, you know, all the different types of trees that were there, and it was very, very interesting.
Now,
So-
did they talk at all about any beaver in that area? Because sometimes
No.
they dam up the part of the meandering of the creek.
I tried to paddle up that one time and ended up having to get out and drag the kayak over.
It was a little shallow.
Because, well, the trees fall down, and it's like the creek is just barely narrow enough that like a tree could fall and kind of block the whole thing.
Right.
So after about the second or third tree, it's like, okay, this isn't working very
Yeah.
well. So I gave up on it. But for a tree to block French Creek, I mean, it's, that's very unusual. You'd have to have a very, very
Right.
tall tree to block French
Right,
Creek.
right, because it's so wide.
But the Cussewago Creek, that's maybe what, 50 feet wide in some
Right.
places, or 40 feet wide. One tree, if it falls just the right direction, it
It can
can't
block.
block it. And then the water pushes it down, then it wedges on the other side. And
Right.
So, I mean, if you don't mind getting out and dragging your boat over top, you
Sure.
can still
Sure.
paddle around there.
Right.
But it is a little bit different.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because I read a story once about going back to French Creek and a tree falling over when George Washington was navigating the whole thing
Wow.
or taking the message to the French or whatever he did back in the day. They had a problem with that in the winter with a tree falling over and having to get out, take the canoe, and go around the fallen tree. So
Wow.
it has happened on French Creek before. At least the history books say it. So or some article I read. But
It's one of those, I remember different times that we've been paddling, and that topic always comes up. It's like, if you see a tree, don't go near it, because it's kind of like a funnel, and it wants to draw you, and you
Right.
can get yourself wedged, in the
Into
branches
that.
of the tree,
Right,
and so
right.
that is a dangerous thing. So you want to be cautious about that when you
Sure.
are out paddling on the creek. And it is going to happen. I mean, the trees are going to fall in the creek from time to time.
That's right. That's right.
I know up at our property, the creek up there, every once in a while it washes away, and a big tree, kind of comes down, and its roots are still hanging on,
Right.
but it's like stuck out at an angle in the creek, and yeah, I could see where that could be a hazard.
a problem.
You could get yourself in trouble with that.
Right.
So steer clear of that when you're out paddling in your canoe, your kayak, or whatever on the creek. Steer clear of those trees.
Right. Right.
I forget what they call that. It's almost like a filter situation where the water's kind of all like filtering under the branches, and you can get hung up, in the branches.
Right.
And if the nose of the boat goes down, under the tree.
Oh, yeah, it would
and
get stuck right in there.
You can really get in a tough spot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And be calling for help, and for someone to get there to help you might not be very easy.
That's true too,
Yeah.
because it's like maybe there isn't a road nearby that
Right.
you can get to quickly, and that's hiking around yesterday at the. It's like there's places where you're a good ways away from the road.
Sure.
When we first started out, we were right by Rogers Ferry Road, which is interesting. There's a couple of spots on Rogers Ferry Road that the Conservancy has places there.
Right.
And you're walking for 5 minutes. It's like, man, that road's gone. I'm not even sure where that road went to.
Right. Where am I, and where's the road? I've been back there before, as I used to live in that area, so I know exactly what you're talking about. You're not always next to the road. You're not always next to the creek.
And it's kind of, my thing is like, well, you look at the sun, and the sun's going to be in the south, or it's going to be in the east in the morning, or it's going to be in the west in the evening. And it's like, whenever we get a big snow, you get a big snowstorm, you can't see where the sun is,
Right,
and so it's, all right, which way we head? So thankfully, people knew where they were,
That's
and
good
were
that they
able
knew.
to
Yeah.
kind of coach around.
Yep.
One thing that was a little bit tricky about that was it was slippery, with the. And there was potential for a stumble and fall, and so it did happen. A few people had a stumble on the trip, but no one got hurt. So.
That's good. Do you plan on going back in the spring, or maybe even in
definitely.
the summer?
Oh, definitely,
Okay.
yeah.
Because it's going to look totally different. You're going to have more access to it, obviously. So thick brush. They get some thick brush back there.
I was one little spot. I'm not a hater. I don't hate people's religion or anything else.
Right.
I do hate multifloral rows, and there was one little patch of multifloral rows
yes,
there.
yes.
So it's like my favorite thing would be to stay away from that.
Right,
It was kind of
right.
right where you went in and where you came out. It was
Gotcha,
kind of, and the thorns are all sticking.
I was gonna say the
sticking over the
thorns.
trail there, right where you come in. But
Right.
that was at our property up in Russell in Warren County. That just has taken over.
Everything.
It's just brutal. And it's like I come home and it's like I forgot I wore my new jeans. They're all snagged up,
Now, is that considered an invasive species?
Yes.
Yes, that's what I
Yeah.
thought. Yeah.
I guess it was brought like 200 years ago or whatever to make hedgerows and
Yes,
stuff.
yes.
It just took over.
It is everywhere. We went to the Pennsylvania Grand Canyon, and it lined the entire canyon, and we couldn't figure out what it was, and then we came back and realized it's all here too. But yeah.
The thorns are like little hooks. They just grab you, and it's like you can't pull away from it. It's like
You're in there. You're hooked
the
in.
more you pull, the more it digs into
right,
you.
Right. You're
So,
hooked in.
My favorite thing would be to take little clippers along and just cut every time you see one, cut it
There you
off.
go. Cut one down. So it looks like. There's my timer. Ooh.
Wow.
What do you think of that?
Wow, that's awesome.
Okay. I'm gonna keep that closed. We're going to move this one over. And we did that for 15 minutes. Our favorite time, Dwayne.
It's always my favorite time.
And the dogs, too.
And Lulu's not going too far
Go
away.
figure, right? Look at that. You know what? We'll stick that other one in there if you want to open that up.
Okay. Watch your nose, Lulu.
Okay. What do you think?
Kind of sizzling there.
Yeah, the butter, the herbs.
How about that?
Looks good. Okay. Well, Dwayne, it is that time.
Again, my favorite part of the show.
Yes, I forgot to bring a spatula. I better use this. Just take this piece. All right. There you go. Smells really good.
It smells wonderful. Let it cool off a little bit here.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Oh, that is awesome, Lisa.
It melts in your mouth.
Just like falls into, wow.
Nice and flaky. Easy recipe. Really good. I'd like to do it again and do it with fresh herbs because you know you're gonna get a totally different take on that. But nice and flaky.
This is wonderful.
Oh, I like the chives. Really good. That's a keeper.
Absolutely. We will share the recipe
Yes.
on Crawford County Outdoors on our Facebook page.
Great. Great.
So watch for that.
Yep.
Well, Lisa, thank you very much for the
Well,
awesome
thank you.
recipe.
You're welcome.
Thank you to the group who put together the hike on the Cussewago Meander. And thank you at home for joining us, and we will talk to you next time.